If you had asked my ex what his passion project was, he would have said his podcast. If you had asked me what his passion project was, I would have said me, specifically, recording me without my consent and turning my life into content. For a while, I thought it was harmless. Until I realized I wasn't his girlfriend anymore. I was material. And if he wanted an audience that badly, I figured his most important fans should hear everything. His conservative, church elder parents. I'm Julia. I'm 26 and I work as a social media manager for a small nonprofit in North Carolina. I met Adam on Tinder, which in hindsight should have been my first warning sign, but here we are. He was cute in a scruffy bearded, graphic tee kind of way. His bio said, marketing by day, comedy podcast by night. Looking for someone who laughs easily and hates small talk. Our first date was at a brewery. He made me laugh. Talked about how he and his roommate ran a small but growing podcast called Real Talk with the Boys, where they discussed relationships, culture, and what nobody tells you about adulting. He said, adulting with irony, which somehow made it worse. I try to keep it honest, he said. No filters. I should have asked, on whom? Instead, I said, cool, and ordered another cedar. We'd been dating about 3 months when I first heard myself on his show. Without having been there. It was a Sunday afternoon. Adam had sent me the link to his latest episode with the caption, "We talk about relationship green flags this week. You get a shout out." I put it on while I was cleaning. At first, it was normal brow podcast stuff. Intro music. Him and his roommate Jake bantering about being late coffee orders, whatever. Then Adam said, "Okay, so speaking of relationships, I had this wild conversation with my girlfriend this week about chores and expectations. Listen to this." There was a click. And then my voice, tinny, but unmistakable. "I don't mind doing most of the cooking, but I need you to help with dishes at least half the time. I'm not your mom." My heart lurched. I froze, Swiffer in hand. Where had that come from? I remembered the conversation. We'd been on his couch. No mechs. No, we're recording talk. Just me after a long day, trying to explain that I didn't want to be the only one doing dishes when he forgot. On the podcast, he paused the clip and laughed. "See what I mean?" he said. "Women always say they're fine with doing stuff, but then it's like I'm not your mom." Jake laughed. "Bro, she's got a point," he said. "You always were a dish dodger." They played more. My private words, cut up and spliced, with Adam adding commentary. "It just feels like you assume I'll pick up your slack." Podcast me said, "Okay, but she likes cleaning." Adam said, "She literally organizes for fun. Why ruin a good thing?" I stopped the audio, my ears were burning. I called him. He picked up on the third ring, cheerful. "Hey, babe. Listening to the ep?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Why is my voice in it?" He chuckled. "Oh, that," he said. "It was such a good convo I had to share. People love real relationship talk. You recorded me," I said slowly. "Without telling me?" "I told you I use memos sometimes for ideas," he said. "You saw my phone on the table." "Your phone is always on the table," I said. "You didn't say, 'I'm recording this for the podcast.' You didn't ask." He sighed. "Jules, you're overthinking this," he said. "You didn't say anything bad, you actually came off great. People will relate to you." "That's not the point," I said. "The point is consent. I didn't agree to be on your show." He went quiet for a second. "Okay, I get it," he said finally. "Next time I tell you when I'm recording. Happy?" "Take the clip down," I said. "Blur my name if you mention me?" "We don't even say your name," he said. "You're just my girlfriend. Nobody knows it's you." I knew. My friends who listened would know. The few coworkers who followed him because of me, they'd know. But he clearly didn't see the problem. "Adam," I said, "I'm serious. I'm not okay with this." He sighed again, more dramatically. "I'll think about editing it later," he said. "It's already uploaded. People are listening." "I'll think about editing it later" turned into, "It's not worth the hassle, nobody cares." He'd underestimated at least 2 people. Me, and his parents. I'd met Mr. and Mrs. Miller once. Sunday roast. Family photos, cross-stitched Bible verses on the walls. They were nice in that tight, Southern Baptist way that makes you feel like you're being scanned for sins. His dad is a deacon at their church. His mom runs the women's ministry. They asked me what my parents do in the Lord. I said my mom volunteers at the animal shelter and my dad plays bass in a cover band. Not the right answer. Adam had always downplayed his podcast to them. "They think it's like a book club," he'd said, rolling his eyes. "If they knew we talked about sex and politics, they'd lose it." "Cool. So you know exactly who would care about your content. You just assumed I wouldn't." The first clip I heard of myself wasn't sexual or political. Just mildly embarrassing. Annoying. I almost let it go. Then, a few weeks later, he did it again. This time about my medication. I take antidepressants. It's not a secret. But it's not something I want broadcast as a punchline. Adam knows this. He was there when I had my first panic attack in our second month together. He's heard me cry about side effects. One night, we were lying in bed. I told him about my therapist suggesting a dosage adjustment after the miscarriage of a pregnancy. I didn't even know I had until the ER visit. Sometimes your brain chemicals need a little boost, I said. I'm not ashamed of that, I just don't want it to define me. He nodded, held me. Said all the right things. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling Spotify at work and saw the title of his new episode. Dating someone with high maintenance mental health? My stomach sank. I hit play. Halfway through, he said, "Let me tell you boys. There's a lot they don't tell you about SSRIs. Like how your girl will cry because the barista made her drink wrong and then want you to help her research side effects at midnight." Then, like the worst déjà vu, I heard my voice again, clipped from that night in bed. I know it's not fun for you to hear me talk about meds all the time, but it's better than me spiraling quietly and pretending I'm fine. They'd layered dumb sound effects over it. A sad trombone, laughter. Bro, are you her therapist or her boyfriend? Jake joked. Some days I feel like both, Adam said. The rest of the segment was him complaining about my emotional labor. While I sat at my desk at the nonprofit, listening to my private vulnerability turned into content for strangers, something went cold in me. I looked at the podcast page. Over 1,500 monthly listens, like, so real, man. And my ex was JST like this. I took a deep breath, texted him. We need to talk about the new episode. Adam, you're listening already, that one's spicy lol. Me, you used me Agia and played our bed convo? About my meds. Adam, Jules, calm down. I didn't say Julia from Raleigh who works at and takes Lexapro. No, I know it's you. Me, I know it's me. You violated my privacy. Twice, after promising you'd at least warn me. Adam, everyone uses their relationships for content. Writers, comedians, TikTokers. It's not that deep. They usually change details or get consent. Adam, you're overreacting again? Irony. Right? Something inside my chest hardened. I stared at our thread. At his refusal to see me as a person rather than material. At his assumption that I just huff and then move on. He loved using the phrase, consequences are a social construct, whenever anyone suggested he think ahead. Time to introduce him to a construct he definitely cared about. Parental approval. I didn't want to blow up his life for one bad decision. But this wasn't one. It was a pattern. I started listening to older episodes. I wish I hadn't. He'd talked about me having a body count higher than his comfort zone. About my dad's drinking at Christmas. About a fight we'd had when I asked him not to joke about telling his mom we were living in sin. All anonymized. Sort of. He never said names. But the details were close enough that anyone who knew us would recognize pieces. I thought about his parents. They followed me on Facebook, commented on our couple pictures with, "So happy for you too. Praying for your future." Sometimes, when visiting, I'd hear Adam carefully editing his stories to keep them happy, leaving out swearing, leaving out sex, leaving out his entire podcast persona. He compartmentalized like a pro. I was done helping him, so I became my job for a minute a researcher. I downloaded a few episodes, clipped the worst parts. The mental health rant. A bit where he joked about convincing my girl to skip church with me by promising brunch and sex. A segment where he rated women's bodies on campus with Jake. I transcribed them. Then, after debating for longer than I care to admit, I opened Facebook Messenger and started a new group, Adam's Podcast Receipts, with Mr. and Mrs. Miller. I stared at the blinking full 5 minutes. Was this petty? Absolutely. Did he deserve it? Also absolutely. Finally, I type E. Hi, I'm Mr. and Mrs. Miller. I'm really sorry to bring this to you, but I think there are some things you deserve to know about Adam's podcast. He's mentioned. He has repeatedly recorded and shared private conversations about me without my consent, including about my mental health treatment and our sex life, to an audience of strangers. I've attached short clips and transcripts so you can hear his own words. If you'd like full episode links, I can provide those too. I'm sharing this because I'm no longer comfortable being with someone who treats my life as content, and I don't feel right watching him present one version of himself to you while doing this behind your backs. Julia. My hands shook as I attached the audio and transcript screenshots. I hovered over send. Once I clicked, That was it. But then I thought about lying in bed, sharing my fears, hearing them days later with a laugh track. I thought about him telling me I was overreacting. I hit send. They saw it within an hour. Facebook helpfully showed, seen by Linda Miller, John Miller. No reply. My stomach churned. I pictured them listening in their kitchen, coffee mugs in hand, mouths slowly dropping. I pictured Adam getting a call. Sure enough, 30 minutes later, my phone lit up. Adam calling. I answered. What the hell did you do? He demanded, skipping hello. You mean besides take back my narrative? I asked. You messaged my parents with podcast clips, he said. Are you insane? Am I insane for wanting consent? I said. Or for thinking your parents deserve to know what you actually say when you're not editing yourself for church brunch? They're freaking out, he said. Mom is crying. Dad wants to talk to Pastor. You made me look like a monster. You did that, I said. I just provided the citations. You violated my privacy, he said. I laughed. You recorded me without my consent, I said. Multiple times. Then broadcast it. To strangers. You don't get to cry privacy now? That's different, he snapped. This is family. They're going to judge me forever. Maybe they should, I said. Or maybe you can finally be honest with them. That's your problem, not mine anymore. What does that mean? He asked. It means we're done, I said. I won't date someone who treats me like content. You can monetize someone else's trauma. Jules, don't do this, he said, voice shifting to wounded. We're good together. The podcast is just a character. A character based on me? I said. Without my consent, that's not love, Adam. That's exploitation. He was silent for a long moment. You're going to regret this, he said finally. No one's going to want to date the girl who tattles to moms. I'll take that risk, I said. Enjoy explaining real talk of the boys to Pastor Tom. I hung up. Then I blocked him on everything. The fallout was messy. Not for me, surprisingly. For him. I heard through Jenna, Daniel's sister, yes, same Jenna from the other threads, that the podcast went dark. Episodes disappeared. His Instagram for it, Real Talk Boys Pod, got renamed to something generic. A week later, he posted a Notes app apology. Hey listeners, taking a break from the pod to do some personal work. I crossed some lines using people in my life as material without their consent. That's not the kind of man I want to be. His parents. They never messaged me back. But his mom unfriended me on Facebook. Which, frankly, felt like a blessing. I heard from mutuals, not from snooping, that Adam had a very rough dinner with them. Words like disrespect, fornication, and gossip were thrown around. He stopped going to their church. They stopped sharing his "proud of our son" posts. I wasn't gleeful about that. It was sad, in a way. But also inevitable. If you build a public persona on honesty without boundaries, eventually the people you're using as props will notice. I moved on. Blocked, deleted, therapied my way out of that chapter. Eventually, I started dating again. On my second date with my now boyfriend, Evan, I told him the podcast story. Wow, he said. That's next level inconsiderate. Yeah, I said. So FYI, I will never okay with being recorded without consent, and I reserve the right to reply all with evidence if anyone tries again. Totally fair, he said. You have my full, enthusiastic consent to expose me if I ever secretly put you on a podcast. We've been together a year. No hidden mics so far. Do I feel bad for involving Adam's parents? Sometimes, when I imagine his mom crying. When I think about how complex it is to be the child who disappoints devout parents. But then I remember how he chose to disappoint me. Over and over. How he valued his RG honesty. More than my trust. How he constantly said, if people handle the truth, that's on them. Turns out, that cuts both ways. My boyfriend secretly recorded me for his podcast. So I sent the clips to his conservative parents. Not because I needed them to punish him, because he needed to be seen by the people he'd lied to the most. And because I deserved, finally, to decide who heard my story. And how.